The chrome of the Harley glistened under the late afternoon sun, catching golden streaks of light that made it look almost unreal. I ran my hand along the handlebar, my freshly painted nails tapping lightly against the leather grip. The smell of new leather, mixed with the faint tang of motor oil, made something inside me tighten, a memory I usually keep buried. From my apartment window, I could see the skyline of San Francisco stretching out like a promise. I was supposed to be finishing a pitch deck for client, but my mind was elsewhere. Tonight was my parents' anniversary dinner. 25 years. Silver Jubilee. A celebration of commitment, of family, of everything I once thought I didn't have from them. My phone buzzed against the marble counter. A text from Mom. Don't be late. 7 p.m. sharp. Dad invited some family friends. I smirked to myself, shaking my head. Mom still loved controlling the details. She had no idea what I was bringing to that dinner, what I was bringing into their perfectly planned world. I leaned against the Harley, adjusting the silk blouse tucked neatly into my jeans, the soft fabric cooling against my skin. For years, I carried the weight of something they'd taken from me. Tonight, I would return the favor, but in the grandest, loudest, most beautiful way possible. I was 19 when I bought my first bike. A Yamaha Cherry Red, secondhand but beautiful. I had worked 2 summers at a coffee shop, saving every single tip in a glass jar I hid under my bed. To anyone else, it was just a machine. But to me, it was freedom. Wheels that carried me away from the suffocating little rules of my parents' suburban house in Sacramento. I still remember the first night I rode it down the empty street, the wind tugging my hair loose from its ponytail, the streetlights rushing past like stars. I wasn't just riding a bike. I was escaping expectations. For the first time, I felt like I belonged to myself. My parents didn't share that feeling. My mom wrinkled her nose every time I rolled the Yamaha into the driveway. "This isn't safe for a girl," she'd mutter. Dad would shake his head, burying himself in the newspaper. To them, it wasn't independence, it was rebellion. And then one afternoon, I came home to find the garage empty. At first, I thought maybe Dad had moved it. But when I asked, Mom didn't even flinch. "We sold it," she said, her voice firm, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "It was a distraction. You'll thank us later." My throat burned. My hands shook. "You what?" "It was mine." Dad didn't even look up from the TV. "It was a phase. Focus on college." That night, I sat on the floor of my room, staring at the small, leather keychain my grandmother had given me when I bought the bike. A tiny silver charm shaped like wings. She had pressed it into my palm and whispered, "Fly while you can, sweetheart." Now the bike was gone, but I clutched that keychain like a lifeline. Hot tears blurred my vision, but under the anger, a fire lit inside me. They had taken my freedom, but I swore right then they would never take my will. I would earn back more than a bike. I would build a life so big, so undeniable, that no one could ever sell it out from under me again. The summer after my bike was sold, I left home. Not in some dramatic midnight escape, but with a quiet determination. I packed 2 duffel bags, one with clothes, the other with notebooks, my laptop, and that silver-winged keychain. My parents thought I was moving into the dorms at Sacramento State, but instead, I found a Craigslist listing for a cheap room above a garage in Oakland. It smelled faintly of grease and gasoline, and the walls were thin enough to hear the landlord's TV downstairs, but it was mine. I worked mornings at a diner, the kind where your shoes always stuck to the floor and the coffee tasted like burnt toast. Afternoons, I interned for free at a small marketing firm. Nights, I studied. Marketing wasn't my first love, but it was the engine that could fuel everything else. If I wanted independence, I needed money, and not just enough to scrape by. I needed wealth, leverage, freedom. Most nights, I fell asleep on my textbooks, mascara smudged under my eyes. I questioned myself constantly. Was I reckless? Ungrateful? Chasing an impossible dream? But every time doubt pressed down on me, I touched that keychain. Its cool metal reminded me, fly while you can. My first big break came from a woman named Diane Porter. She owned a boutique motorcycle gear shop in San Francisco. I had walked in one afternoon, desperate for part-time work. Instead of hiring me for the counter, she let me pitch her a new social media campaign. I don't know what gave me the guts. I had never sold an idea like that before. But I spoke with conviction, fueled by the memory of what I'd lost. Diane leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against her notepad. Then she smiled. "You've got fire, kid. Okay, let's see what you can really do." That first campaign wasn't perfect, but it worked. Sales ticked up, and suddenly, Diane trusted me with more. Within a year, I wasn't just her part-timer. I was freelancing for 3 other small businesses. The money wasn't glamorous at first, but it was mine. Every invoice I sent was proof that I could stand on my own. Meanwhile, my parents thought I was getting by. They called once a week, asking the same questions. "Are you eating? Are you studying? Do you need money?" I answered with vague updates. I never mentioned Diane, the campaigns, or the clients who were starting to pay real money. Let them think I was struggling. Let them underestimate me. 3 years later, I had my own small marketing agency, 2 employees, a few loyal clients, and a reputation for making niche brands shine. I worked insane hours, sometimes forgetting to eat, sometimes breaking down in the shower from sheer exhaustion. But every win mattered. My first office lease, my first client who paid 5 figures, the first time I bought a brand new laptop without checking my bank balance twice. I didn't post about it online. I didn't flaunt the office or the clients. My parents still thought I was just freelancing a little while working odd jobs. They didn't know about the growing savings account, the Harley brochures I kept tucked in my desk drawer, or the dream that had never died. The bike they sold had been my first taste of freedom, but I was building an empire that no one could touch. And one day, I would roll back into their lives, not with excuses or apologies, but with thunder in my wake. The night of my parents' anniversary dinner, the sky over Sacramento glowed deep purple, like velvet stretched across the horizon. I pulled into their neighborhood not in the rusty sedan they thought I still drove, but on the back of a Harley Davidson Softail, sleek, black, and polished until it mirrored every streetlight. The engine's roar silenced as I turned into their driveway. Neighbors on the porch across the street paused mid-conversation, their eyes widening. I swung my leg over the bike, pulled off my helmet, and shook out my hair. For a second, it was quiet enough to hear the cicadas buzzing. The front door opened. My father, Robert Miller, stepped out, adjusting his tie. His mouth actually fell open. My mother, Linda, peeked around him, her hands frozen on the doorframe. "Jessica?" Dad finally said. "Hey, Dad." I smiled, tucking the helmet under my arm. "Happy anniversary." I didn't miss the way their guests, family friends, church acquaintances, whispered as I walked past them, the heels of my boots clicking against the driveway. My silk blouse shimmered under the porch light, a quiet declaration. I wasn't the girl they once silenced. Inside, the house looked exactly as I remembered. Polished oak floors, framed family portraits, the smell of Mom's pot roast clinging to the air. But tonight, the space felt smaller. Or maybe I'd just grown larger than the walls that once held me. Dinner passed with polite conversation, strained smiles, and questions about my freelance work. Dad cleared his throat, clearly expecting me to fumble through vague excuses. I let him believe it for a while. Then, after dessert, I set my fork down. "I brought a gift for you both. It's outside." Mom blinked. "You didn't need to." "I wanted to," I interrupted softly but firmly. We stepped into the driveway. The Harley gleamed under the porch light, chrome catching every flicker of gold. The murmurs of their friends swelled. "This is ours," Mom whispered. "Yes," I said, holding out the keys. "Happy 25th. A Harley Davidson, for the 2 people who once decided a bike wasn't meant for me. The words hung heavy in the air, cutting through the quiet night. Dad's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking between me and the machine. "You bought this?" His voice was disbelieving. "With my own money. From the business I built." I slipped the silver keychain, my grandmother's wings, onto the Harley key before pressing it into his hand. "Remember when you sold my Yamaha? I swore I'd never let anyone decide my freedom again. This," I gestured at the Harley, "is proof that you didn't." For a moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched, filled only by the creak of crickets outside. Then Mom's eyes filled with tears, spilling over as she pressed her hands to her mouth. I didn't realize, she whispered. No, I said gently. You didn't.
You thought you were protecting me.
But you were teaching me something else entirely. Dad stared at the Harley, his expression torn between pride and shame. His fingers tightened around the keys. For the first time in my life, I saw him speechless. The guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing the shift in power. Whispers carried across the lawn. She bought them a Harley. With her own company? I let the silence linger, savoring the moment. Then I straightened, my voice calm but unyielding. You underestimated me once. Tonight, I want you to see me clearly. Not as your little girl, not as a phase you had to correct, but as the woman who built her own road and chose to share it with you. Their world had cracked wide open, and I was the one holding the light. The murmurs of the guests faded as the crowd drifted back into the house, leaving only the three of us in the driveway. The Harley glistened between us, almost like a mediator, its chrome reflecting our faces, my calm resolve, my mother's guilt, my father's stubborn silence. Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling. Jessica, we thought we were protecting you. We didn't want you to get hurt. That bike was mine, I said softly but firmly. It wasn't about danger, Mom. It was about control. You thought you knew what was best for me, but you never asked what I wanted. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We're your parents. It was our responsibility to guide you. Guidance is one thing, I replied, meeting his gaze. Erasing my choices is another. You didn't just sell a bike, you sold my freedom, my trust. But you know what? I built something bigger out of that loss. I turned it into fuel. They both looked at me now, really looked as if seeing me for the first time. I took a slow breath. I didn't bring this Harley to punish you. I brought it to show you how far I've come, and to set some terms if we're going to have a real relationship moving forward. Mom's brows knitted. Terms? Yes. My voice was steady, unwavering. If you want to be part of my life now, there are conditions. First, you stop underestimating me. No more dismissive comments about what women can or cannot do. Second, you respect my independence, even when it doesn't match your expectations. Third, you start listening before deciding what's best for me. They were silent processing. I let the weight of my words settle. And one more thing, I added softer now. This isn't just about me. If you ever have grandchildren, whether daughters or sons, you don't repeat this pattern. You let them dream, even if it scares you. Especially if it scares you. Mom's tears spilled freely now, streaking down her cheeks. You're right, she whispered. We thought we were doing the right thing, but we hurt you instead. I'm so sorry, Jessica. Dad swallowed hard, his jaw working. For a moment, I thought he might argue again, retreat into the armor of authority he always wore. But then he exhaled, long and heavy, like a man setting down a burden he'd carried too long. You've built something incredible, he said finally. I don't know how I missed it. Maybe I didn't want to see it. But I see you now. And I'm proud. Ashamed of how I handled things back then, but proud. The admission hit me harder than I expected. A lump rose in my throat, but I held steady. I don't need your pride to validate me, I said quietly. But I'll take it, because it means you're finally seeing me as I am. I placed my hand on the Harley's seat, feeling the cool leather beneath my palm. This bike isn't just a gift. It's a reminder. Every time you look at it, remember the daughter you once underestimated and the woman she became despite it. They both nodded, wordless now, the gravity of the moment sinking deep. For the first time, the power dynamic had shifted entirely. I wasn't their little girl anymore. I was their equal, maybe even their teach. The days after the anniversary dinner felt different. My parents called more often, not to pry or instruct, but to ask, to listen. When Mom asked about my work, there was genuine curiosity in her voice, not veiled criticism. Dad even stopped by my office once, standing awkwardly in the doorway like a man stepping into unfamiliar territory. He didn't say much, but I caught the way his eyes lingered on the framed client logos, the sleek conference table, the awards on the shelf. He was seeing the empire I had built with his own eyes, and for once, there was no denial. They were trying. Slowly, awkwardly, but trying. One Sunday afternoon, I rode the Harley back to their house. Dad was in the driveway, polishing it with a rag, like it had become his new prized possession. He looked up when I pulled in on a different bike, my own Harley, the one I had bought for myself months earlier. His face broke into something rare for him, a smile unclouded by ego. "You look good on it," he said simply. I smiled back, the wind tugging at my hair. I always did. Inside, Mom had laid out lunch. She pressed a small box into my hand before we ate. Inside was the old Yamaha's registration slip, the one they had never thought to throw away. "I kept it," she admitted quietly, almost ashamed. "I don't know why. Maybe part of me always knew we were wrong." I slipped the folded paper into my wallet, next to the silver-winged keychain that still hung there. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind, "Fly while you can, sweetheart." And I had. That night, as I rode home under a California sunset, I thought about the girl who once cried on her bedroom floor, clutching a keychain like it was the last piece of herself. She had no idea how strong she was becoming. My parents hadn't just sold my bike, they had sold my illusion that love always meant support. And in losing that, I found something greater, the strength to build a life on my own terms. Now, they weren't just my parents. They were people who had learned from me, who had begun to grow alongside me. And, in a way, gifting them that Harley had been less about revenge and more about rewriting our story. Because sometimes, the loudest way to forgive is to let the engine roar. They once sold the wheels of my freedom, but I returned with a Harley and a daughter they finally learned to believe in.